She was chained to the stake, the wood piled up to her ankles, and suddenly the Duke threw down his scepter. "Unchain her, and let anyone touch her." The scepter at the stake. "Your satchel of herbs is safe, clutch my waist, do not fall. You may cry when we reach the keep." The late winter wind, laced with shards of ice, stung my face like 1,000 needles. I was chained at the center of the stake, my wrists raw, the iron rings clanking a sharp, echoing clang in the desolate city square, a death knell. The noon sun offered no warmth against the chill deep in my bones. Firewood was stacked to my ankles, dry kindling mixed with pine resin, ready to consume my skirts the moment Valen gave the order. "She is a witch." Martha's screech tore through the crowd. She was pressed to the front, clutching a stone, her nails digging into her palm. "My daughter died drinking her potions. She used dark arts to steal my daughter's life." More stones followed. One grazed my cheek, leaving a stinging line, another struck my shoulder. I stumbled, the chain biting harder into my wrist. I wanted to tell them it was the plague, that I had used every herb my mother left me, but could not save her. My voice caught in my throat, drowned by the villagers' fury. Their eyes, filled with fear and rage, threatened to engulf me. In the kingdom of Verona, the word "witch" meant death, no evidence, no defense required. Valen stood beside the stake, holding a searing iron brand. The word "evil," etched on its tip, gleamed malevolently in the sun. He wore the deep crimson vestments of the Inquisitor, the golden cross embroidered on his collar, yet to me, that cross was more unsettling than the pyre. "Ilara," he spoke, his voice thin like metal scraping metal. "Confess to harming others with your dark arts, and I will grant you a swift end. The flames will consume you quickly." I tightened my grip on the small satchel of herbs tucked in my sleeve, my mother's last token. It held dried mint and marigold, common remedies for the chill, yet Valen called it a vessel of wickedness. "I have harmed no one," my voice trembled, but my gaze held his. "These herbs are for healing, as my mother once healed the wounded soldiers." "Your mother?" Valen scoffed, bringing the brand closer to the pyre. Sparks crackled up, landing on my skirt, burning a tiny black mark. "The Northland's witch who was burned 20 years ago. You are the same as her. You shall both atone in fire." He waved his hand. 2 Templar soldiers advanced with torches. The heat of the flame grew closer, I could smell the scorching of my own dress. Just then, the urgent gallop of horses thundered in the distance, tearing the square's clamor like a thunderclap. The villagers turned, and I squinted into the distance. A troop of black-clad riders sliced through the crowd. The man at the front rode a massive steed, his black duke's cloak snapping in the wind. A deep, visible war scar on his left cheek stood out starkly in the sunlight. It was Duke Samuel. I was stunned. He was the Kingdom of Verona's commander-general, holding sway over the city's outer military forces. He was private, moving only between the battlefield and the king's palace. Why was he here? The troop halted before the stake. Samuel dismounted with an ease that belied an idle nobleman. He ignored the villagers and Valen, walking straight to the stake, his gaze fixed on my chained wrists. Valen was clearly unnerved but tried to cling to his authority. "My Lord Duke, this is the church's witch hunt business. You should not interfere. My business is not for you to dictate." Samuel cut him off, his voice as cold as the late winter ice. He suddenly raised his hand and hurled the silver scepter from his waist. It flashed in the air, striking the brand in Valen's hand with a loud clatter. The brand fell, rolling far away on the stone floor, leaving a scorched streak. "Let any man dare touch her." Samuel's roar rattled my eardrums. He stood before me, his black cloak shielding half my body like a strong barrier. The villagers fell silent. Valen's face flushed purple, but he dared not advance, pointing at Samuel. "The Duke transgresses divine authority." By protecting a witch, do you not fear the Church's wrath? Samuel looked back, his cold glance forcing Valen to instinctively retreat a step. Divine authority does not command those under my keeping. His voice was low but bore undeniable authority. From this day forth, she belongs to me. Cain, the Duke's close aide, stepped forward immediately, produced a key from his belt, and deftly unlocked the chains on my wrists and ankles. The iron clattered to the ground. My legs, numb from being chained for so long, failed me, and I stumbled. Just as I thought I would fall onto the pyre, a strong hand gripped my waist. It was Samuel. His palm was hot, calloused from years of holding a sword, searing my clothing where it touched my waist. I froze. I looked up and met his eyes deep brown, like a forest lake, now reflecting the sparks of the pyre and holding an emotion I could not read. "Can you walk?" he asked, his tone softer, yet still carrying a terse command. I nodded, but could not steady myself. He simply bent, scooped me up into his arms, a motion that was not gentle, but utterly secure. I instinctively grabbed his cloak, my nose brushing against the scent of leather and a faint trace of gunpowder, the smell of the battlefield. "Clutch my waist," he said, looking down, his warm breath on my forehead. "Do not fall off." He swung himself onto the horse, holding me close against him. Clenching his legs to the horse's flanks, the animal neighed and turned toward the square exit. Pressed against his chest, I could hear his strong heartbeat, feel the warmth beneath his cloak. The fear and pain seemed somewhat soothed by his proximity. I glanced back at the stake. Valen remained rooted, glaring at us with a face of iron gray. Martha hid behind the crowd, watching me with complex eyes, no longer shouting, "Witch." The wind whistled past my ears, carrying the scent of scorched wood and the horse's whinnies. I touched the satchel in my sleeve. Safe. The faint aroma of mint remained. Samuel must have noticed my movement, for he looked down and asked, "Your satchel of herbs is safe?" "Yes," I whispered. My tears finally fell, hitting the back of his hand. It wasn't pain, it was grievance, relief, and a vague, confusing panic. Our status was vast, he, the commander general, I, the accused witch. Why did he save me? Was it because of my mother? He said nothing more, only patting my back gently with his other hand, like calming a startled animal. "Cry when we reach the keep," he said, a rare note of tenderness in his voice. "Valen's men are watching outside. Do not let them see your weakness." I quickly wiped my tears, looking ahead. The silhouette of the Duke's keep grew clear in the distant mist. The black gate was like a silent mouth waiting for us. But my heart grew more anxious. Valen would not relent, nor would the church forgive. Was this keep a sanctuary of salvation, or merely another gilded cage? The troop neared the gate. The guards bowed respectfully, but behind them, in the shadows, I saw a flash of crimson, the color of the Templar vestments. My heart leaped into my throat. I instinctively tightened my grip on Samuel's waist. The garret cage of the Duke's keep. The garret door is unlocked. But should you take one step out, the next thing that saves you will not be my scepter, but my sword against Valen's men. When Cain escorted me to the garret door, the late winter wind still swirled through the keep's corridors, wrapping the light of the lanterns around the columns, casting flickering shadows on the stone steps. I walked up, stepping on those broken lights, each step like treading an uncertain edge. The garret door was dark brown, years of grime embedded in the wood grain. When I pushed it open, it let out a groaning creak, like an old man's rusty joints. The first thing that hit my senses was the clean scent of herbs mixed with the mustiness of old wood, which surprisingly eased my tension. I walked in, using the faint light filtering through the door crack, to find the garret windows were heavily boarded up, only tiny slivers of sunlight leaking through the gaps, falling on a pile of unremarkable old things in the corner. I knelt and touched a familiar object, my mother's old herb grinder. The brass wheel was oxidized and blackened, but the edges were still smooth from years of constant use. Clearly, someone had deliberately kept it. So you truly knew my mother? I murmured unconsciously, pressing my fingers against the grinder. Through the cool metal, I felt a trace of my mother's warmth. She always said, the finer the grind, the truer the medicine. I would sit beside her as she worked her wrist, the sunlight catching her hair like gold dust. Now, only this cold grinder confirmed her presence here. Click-clack, the sound of a candle being lit came from behind. I spun around to see Samuel standing by the doorway, holding a burning candle. The warm yellow light reflected off the war scar on his left cheek, softening the grim line. He did not step in, only stood at the threshold. His gaze swept over the grinder in my hand and returned to my face, his tone still the cold command. Your mother. Was she the herbalist who treated the wounded in the Northlands 20 years ago? My heart skipped a beat. It was because of my mother. I clutched the grinder, my nails digging into my palm, afraid to admit it immediately. Valen had called her the Northlands, which confessing the connection would only put me in greater danger. I cannot recall, I lowered my head, my voice shaking. Mother died young, she never spoke much of the past. He took 2 steps forward. The candle's light moved with him, casting his tall shadow onto the floor, nearly covering me. The garret was small, his proximity made the air seem thin. I could smell him leather, gunpowder, and a faint hint of herbs, much like my mother's own scent. Cannot recall? He scoffed, pointing the candlestick toward the grinder in the corner. Then how do you recognize the grinder in your hand? I was speechless, only able to clutch the grinder, watching the candlelight dance in his eyes. Just then, a soft tap 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 sounded on the door. Kane's voice came from outside, laced with hesitation. My Lord Duke, I need a word. Samuel called out, enter. Kane pushed the door open, clutching a crumpled letter. His eyes, already vigilant, sharpened when he saw me, but he lowered his head to Samuel first. My lord, a church messenger just delivered this. Valen writes you are transgressing divine authority by sheltering a witch, and vows to take the matter to the king personally. He paused, glancing at me, lowering his voice further. Perhaps, we should send her to the border estate. It is remote, Valen's men 1T find her, and it avoids the church's pursuit. No. Samuel rejected it instantly, his voice carrying undeniable power. She remains under my sight. Kane was visibly surprised, clearly not anticipating such firmness. He pressed. But, my Lord Duke, is tangling with the church over an accused witch truly worth it? She has a purpose. Samuel cut him off suddenly, his eyes falling on the satchel of herbs in my hand, his voice cold as ice. Her remedies can treat my old wound, better than the court physicians. She remains at the keep until my wounds are healed. My heart sank. So it wasn't because of my mother. It was simply because my herbs were useful. Of course. Why would the Commander General protect a witch for no reason? I let go of the grinder. The chill from the metal crept through my veins, and the warmth I'd felt earlier vanished. Kane tried to speak again, but Samuel stopped him with a look. Go. Watch the movements outside closely. Do not let Valen's men near the garret. Samuel waved him off. Kane nodded, giving me a final look of warning. Behave yourself. Silence returned to the garret, broken only by the sizzle of the burning candle. Samuel walked to the corner, lifted a heavy wooden chest, and placed it before me. It was carved with tiny herbal patterns. When he opened it, a strong scent of mint rose, filled with dried marigold, mint, and some rare herbs I'd only seen in my mother's books. Tell the steward if you lack anything. He closed the chest and turned toward the door. He paused at the threshold and looked back at me. Do not attempt to go downstairs. Valen's men are watching outside. If they see you, they will report it to the church immediately. I looked at his back, and suddenly found the courage to ask, "Did you save me because of my mother?" He stopped. The candlelight fell on his profile. I couldn't read his expression. After a few seconds, he spoke slowly, his voice devoid of emotion. "You only need to know that you are safe here in the garret." Without looking back, he gently closed the door. The final clack of the closing door was like a lock, separating me from the outside world. I knelt before the chest, my fingers brushing the dried mint, and tears welled up. It had to be my mother, didn't it? Why else would he keep her grinder, or know about these rare herbs only she used? But why wouldn't he admit it? The candle flame dwindled, and the sunlight from the cracks faded. The garret grew dark. I took out a match and lit another candle. The warm yellow light once again illuminated the grinder in the corner. I placed it on the chest, took a pinch of mint from my satchel, and began turning the wheel as my mother had taught me. The creaking echoed in the garret, like my mother gently answering me. Just then, I heard faint footsteps and low voices outside the garret. I quickly blew out the candle and pressed my ear to the door. 2 soldiers. One said, "Lord Valen said to seize the witch the moment she dares to leave." The other replied, "The Duke watches her too closely. We can't even get near the garret. We can only wait outside the keep." My heart pounded. Valen hadn't given up. He was waiting for his chance to seize me. And I, though rescued from the stake, was now trapped in this magnificent garret cage, with only my mother's grinder, a chest of herbs, and a duke whose reasons for saving me remained unknown. I relit the candle, watching the powdered mint on the grinder wheel, suddenly recalling my mother's words, "Herbs can cure sickness, and save lives, but what truly protects you is the one who chooses to believe in you." Samuel, would you be that person? Would you like me to use the narrative you provided to write the next chapter based on the analysis of Valen's likely trap? The Inquisitor's threatening brand. I saw the runes on your door. Next time you draw, remember to close the window. Valen's eyes are sharper than a falcon's. The sun was sinking steeply in the late afternoon, the light filtering through the garret cracks turning pale gold, yet it could not cut through the sudden tension that thickened the air. The first sign was the clanging of armor, rolling from the front hall like heavy drumbeats that made my fingertips prickle. I had just finished wiping clean my mother's herb grinder when a sharp voice cut through the corridor. It was Valen, his throat sounding like sandpaper, his call of my Lord Duke edged with unmistakable menace. I sprang up, pressing my ear to the garret door. The wood grain against my ear allowed me to clearly hear Samuel's voice, cold as ice. "Does the Inquisitor forget the kingdom's laws, barging into my keep without summons?" "Laws?" Valen sneered. "The law for sheltering a witch, or the law for defying the church?" A sharp clash of metal followed. I knew he had raised that brand again. "Witnesses saw you bring the witch to your keep. I must see her today. If she is truly innocent, let her cast aside the wicked herbs from her sleeve before me." My heart clenched. I instinctively touched the satchel in my sleeve. The clean scent of mint remained, but now it felt like a searing iron, making my palms sweat. Valen was here to seize me. He cared nothing for proof. The moment he saw me, he would brand me a witch. Though the garret windows were boarded, there was a gap that hadn't been fully sealed. I rose on my toes and peered out, just catching sight of Samuel in the center of the front hall. His black cloak draped to the floor, the silver scepter gripped in his hand, his knuckles white with strain. Valen stood opposite, holding the familiar brand. The evil symbol glowed dull red. The heat wafted through the air, carrying a faint scorched scent even up to the garret. "There is no witch in my keep," Samuel's voice rang out with unyielding authority. "If you speak slander again, do not fault me for detaining you and your men under the charge of trespassing a noble's home." "Detain me?" Valen took a step forward, the brand nearly touching Samuel's cloak. "Does the Duke wish to start a war with the church?" The king knows you shelter the witch. If you do not yield her today, I shall report to the palace at once. Then, you will lose not only your military command, but this very keep. A cold dread ran through me. My fingers subconsciously traced patterns on the door. My mother had taught me to draw simple protective runes when in danger. Focusing on safety would make them glow faintly. My fingertips, still stained with herb juice from the morning's grinding, drew curving lines on the door. A pale green shimmer was just beginning when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I quickly hid my hands and turned to see Cain standing at the garret entrance, holding a tray with a cup of hot broth. His gaze fell on the door before shifting quickly to my face, his vigilance deeper than before. "The Duke sent broth for you," he set the tray down, his voice hushed. "Ignore the noise below, and for God's sake, do not leave. Valen brought a dozen soldiers, waiting to catch you in the act." I nodded, but saw his eyes drift back to the door, a frown crossing his brow. He saw the rune traces. I swiftly shielded the door with my body, whispering "Thank you, Captain," trying to dismiss him. But Cain stood his ground, staring at my hands for a moment before saying, "You have herb juice on your hands. Do not draw those things on the door. Valen's men are just outside the keep. If they see it, the Duke will not be able to protect you." His words struck me like a thunderbolt. He had seen it. He knew they were runes. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, but dared not refute him. Cain was Samuel's most trusted man. If he reported this to Valen, I was doomed. Just then, Martha's sobs reached us from the front hall. I pressed my ear to the door again, hearing her broken voice, "My Lord Duke, I did not lie before. Ilara did give my daughter herbs, and she called it the dark art of life extension." There. Valen's voice immediately rose. "Even her neighbor confirms it. Does the Duke still intend to shield her?" I trembled with rage. Martha knew I had given her daughter medicine for the plague. How could she lie for Valen? Tears nearly fell, but then Martha suddenly paused, her voice laced with hesitation. But my daughter died of the plague. It had nothing to do with the herbs. And that day, Ilara said if she had more mint, she might save her." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Valen interrupted, his voice sharp. "Did I not tell you to simply say she poisoned her?" Martha's cries grew louder. "I cannot lie. My daughter is gone. I cannot be responsible for harming an innocent soul." The front hall fell silent. I guessed Samuel had seized this breach. Sure enough, his voice soon followed, laced with scorn. "The Inquisitor cannot tell plague from poison, yet dares to investigate a witch?" The dull thud of his scepter hitting the floor followed. "Cain, escort the Inquisitor and his men out. Henceforth, no man of the church shall set foot in the Duke's keep without my explicit permission." A commotion of soldiers followed, then Valen's roar. "Samuel! You can shelter her for a time, but not forever. As long as she remains in Verona, I will find her and deliver her to the stake." The footsteps faded, and the candles in the front hall dimmed. I sighed in relief, collapsing onto the floor, realizing my back was soaked with cold sweat. Martha had spoken the truth, but Valen's threat coiled around my heart like a viper. He would not give up. As long as I lived, he would hound me. The garret door was pushed open. Cain walked in. He still held the empty tray, but ignored me, walking straight to the door and pointing at the faint, pale green rune traces. "I saw the runes on your door," his voice was quiet, yet utterly serious. "Next time you draw, remember to close the window. Valen's men's eyes are sharper than a falcon's. If they see this, not only will you be seized, but the Duke will be brought down with you." I looked up at him. His eyes no longer held the previous suspicion, but a new, complex emotion. He was warning me, not reporting me. "Thank you," I whispered. Cain did not reply. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "The Duke forbade me from telling you, but he has already sent a messenger to the palace to explain his actions to the king. You should behave yourself and not let his efforts be for nothing." The door was softly closed. Silence returned to the garret. I looked at the traces of the rune, remembering Samuel holding me at the stake, the warmth of his palm, and his command, "Do not fall off." He had been protecting me all along, even if it meant defying the church and risking his standing with the king. But Valen's threat echoed, "You can shelter her for a time, but not forever." Could I truly hide in the Duke's keep indefinitely? If Valen reported to the king, would the king believe Samuel, or would he surrender me to appease the church? The candlelights suddenly flickered, casting my lonely shadow on the wall, like one abandoned by the world. I reached out and touched the rune on the door, with one thought: I cannot let Samuel lose his command and his keep because of me. The secret of the old wound and the herbs. Your fingertips are warmer than the salve. Do not be afraid. I will not treat your herbs as dark arts, as Valen does. The wind of the late evening carried the deepest chill of winter, making the garret boards moan softly. I had just put the dried marigold into the wooden chest when a hurried knocking, not the previous soft tap, but a panicked bang-bang rattled the rune traces on the door. "Miss Alara. Come down, quickly." It was the stewardess' voice, trembling and breathless. "The Lord Duke's old wound has flared up. He is in such pain, he has collapsed. The court physicians are helpless. Can you save him?" My heart plummeted. An old wound? Was it the scar on Samuel's left cheek? Without a second thought, I grabbed the satchel from my sleeve and rushed downstairs. The wind from my haste made the corridor candles flicker, casting shadows that danced wildly on the walls like a flock of frantic moths. Passing the front hall, I saw Cain at the stairwell, his face paler than the stewardess. He stepped forward instantly. "Follow me. The study is at the end of the west corridor. Do not waste a moment." His stride was fast. The clanging of his armor mixed with my footsteps, loud in the silent keep. I sensed his deep anxiety, normally so vigilant around me. He offered no word of doubt now, only urging me forward. Samuel must truly be in a terrible state. The study door was ajar, candlelight flickering wildly within. Cain pushed the door open, and I saw Samuel at once. He was slumped over the wide mahogany desk, his black cloak draped on the chair, the cloth over his left shoulder soaked in dark red blood, like a flower blooming in the night. His head rested on his arm, his golden hair obscuring most of his face. Only the deep war scar was visible, gleaming cold in the candlelight. The physician said the wound has residual arrow poison. It flares up with every change of weather. This time, the pain was so severe, he fainted, Cain whispered. "The Duke forbade us from telling anyone, especially you. He feared you would." He trailed off, instinctively looking at the satchel of herbs in my hand. I walked to the desk and knelt. Samuel's breathing was heavy, his brow deeply furrowed. He was enduring pain even in unconsciousness, his knuckles white. I gently lifted the cloak from his shoulder. The bandage was saturated with blood, the edges stained with dried black clots, the residue of arrow poison. My mother had taught me that such poison required the coolness of mint to neutralize, and the essence of marigold to promote healing. Ordinary salves were useless. "I need mint, marigold, a clean mortar, and warm water," I told Cain, my voice steadier than usual. "Quickly. His wound cannot wait." Cain turned and swiftly returned with a tray, holding everything I asked for, including a small pewter apothecary jar. I sat on the chair beside Samuel, placing the mint and marigold in the mortar, slowly grinding them into a fine powder. The gentle grinding sound was clear in the silent study. I sensed Samuel's breathing ease slightly, perhaps soothed by the fresh scent of the herbs. As I mixed the powder into the warm water to form a salve, a touch of it adhered to my fingertip, cool and faintly bitter with mint. I took a clean cotton cloth and gently wiped the clotted blood from Samuel's wound, moving slowly. His skin was cold, entirely different from the warmth of his usual palm. The muscles around the wound still twitched slightly, clearly still in pain. "Hold fast, it will be over soon," I whispered, speaking to him as much as to myself. When I applied the salve to the wound, Samuel's body suddenly stiffened. I thought he was waking and stopped my hand, but he merely frowned, his breathing remaining heavy. As I was wrapping the fresh bandage, my fingertip accidentally brushed the skin not covered by the wound. It was warm, carrying his signature scent of leather and gunpowder. I flinched as if burned, immediately trying to pull my hand back, only to meet his suddenly opened eyes. Samuel's gaze held the confusion of awakening, his deep brown pupils reflecting the candlelight and my own face. We were close, so close I could see the red lines in his eyes and feel the warmth of his breath. He did not speak, simply staring at me. I froze, the bandage in my hand, my fingertips still resting on his skin. We remained locked in place, the only sound the sizzle of the burning candles. "Your salve, it is the same as your mother's," he finally spoke, his voice hoarse, yet gentler than usual. 20 years ago in the Northlands, I was struck by an enemy-poisoned arrow. It was your mother who secretly came to the camp and saved my life with the same mint and marigold." My heartbeat instantly accelerated. The bandage nearly slipped from my fingers. He did know my mother. He saved me not for utility, but for my mother's long-ago kindness. You knew I was her daughter all along?" He nodded, raising a hand as if to touch my hair, but stopping mid-air to touch his bandaged shoulder instead. "The moment you shouted my mother saved wounded soldiers at the stake, I knew. Your mother once said she would only pass her herbal art to her daughter. And she said, if her daughter were ever in danger, I must look after her. So that was it." I clenched the bandage. Tears unexpectedly fell, spotting his cloak, creating a small wet patch. Not from fear, but from the relief that someone finally knew my mother was not a witch and remembered her kindness. A cough suddenly sounded from the corridor cane. It was clearly a deliberate warning. I hastily pulled my hand away, wrapping the bandage quickly. I tried to stand to leave, but Samuel suddenly gripped my wrist. His palm was warm with his recovering body heat. His grip was not tight, yet it kept me from breaking free. I looked up at him. His eyes lacked their usual coldness, replaced by an unsettling tenderness, like the candlelight in the study, a warmth that made me nervous. "Do not run," he said, his voice hushed. "Valen has not left. His men surround the keep. If you leave now, you will be seized. You are safe only when you are with me." I looked into his eyes, remembering the mortar in the garret, his defiance of Valen to protect me, and the pressure of his hand on my wrist. It was not a command, but a plea, a protection. The coolness of the salve still lingered on my fingertips, yet I felt a flush of heat, my breath quickening. The study candles flickered, casting our shadows on the wall, entwined like two inseparable lines. Kane coughed again. I tried to pull free of Samuel's grasp, but he spoke again, close to my ear. "Your fingertips are warmer than the salve. Do not be afraid. I will not treat your herbs as dark arts, as Valen does." His voice was soft, yet it flowed through all my anxieties like a warm current. I looked at the bandage on his shoulder and the hand gripping my wrist, suddenly realizing that this Duke's keep might not be a cage, but truly the only place that could shelter me. Would you like me to continue the story, exploring the shift in Alara and Samuel's relationship now that the secret is revealed? Candlelight in the snowy garret. The watchers love the light on a snowy night. From now on, when I come to the garret, we will light but one candle, enough to see your face and no more. The snow came suddenly in the hour of the bore 9:11 p.m. At first, it was only scattered flakes softly rustling against the garret boards. Then it grew thick, turning to a heavy downpour, carried by the cold wind, hitting the door like a gentle knock. Even wrapped in the thin blanket Samuel had left, I was chilled to the bone, my fingers too stiff to turn the pages of my mother's herbal manual. The candle had burned halfway down, wax trailing like meandering tears. I rested the manual on my lap, staring at a drawing of a sprig of mint. Beside it, Mother's delicate script read, "Boiled into a soup on a winter night, it drives out the cold." The ink was faded, slightly smudged from when she wrote it. I wondered if my mother, on a snowy night in the Northlands, had ever wrapped herself in a blanket like this, brewing hot soup while waiting for someone in need of her herbs. Creak! The garret door was suddenly pushed open. A blast of cold wind and snow rushed in. I instinctively retreated further into the blanket, looking up to see Samuel standing in the doorway. His black cloak was dusted with snow, and a tuft of unmelted flakes clung to the brim of his hood. The war scar on his left cheek was a pale line in the dim candlelight. He paused at the threshold, brushing the snow from his cloak, the motion soft, as if afraid to startle something. The flakes fell to the floor, quickly melting into small puddles. "Cold?" he asked, his voice lower than usual, carrying the crispness of the snowy night. Without waiting for my answer, he stepped in, carrying a thick woolen blanket deep gray, its edges embroidered with fine silver thread. It was clearly one of his own. As he handed it to me, my fingers brushed his icy cold. He must have been standing in the snow for a long time. "The steward said the garret window leaks, and you keep waking up cold at night," he explained, his gaze sweeping over the herbal manual on my lap. His eyes softened on the drawing of the mint. "Your mother also loved to brew mint soup on snowy nights. She said it warms the body and clears the mind." I was startled. Before I could speak, he produced a pewter flask from behind him. Steam still rose from the vessel, and a faint green scent of mint escaped the lid, exactly like the soup my mother used to brew. "The steward brewed it, following your mother's recipe, with a touch of honey." He placed the flask on the small table before me. As he opened the lid, the warm steam blurred his face. "Drink it hot, do not let the cold settle in." I picked up the wooden spoon and tasted the soup. The warm liquid slid down my throat, carrying the faint bitterness of mint and the sweetness of honey. My eyes instantly pricked with warmth. It tasted exactly like my mother's, the sweetness precise. How did you know her recipe?" I asked, my voice trembling, the spoon shaking in my hand. "In the Northlands, the snow fell heavier than this." He sat on the chair opposite me, the candlelight catching his eyes, reflecting the dancing flame. My old wound flared up, and I couldn't sleep. "Your mother brewed this soup for me. She said, when the soup is warm, the pain will not ache so much. She also said the recipe was passed down from her mother, brewed only for those worth saving." "Worth saving." I repeated the phrase, looking down at the mint leaves in the flask. My throat tightened. My mother had spent her life saving others, only to be branded a witch and burned alive. Now, her recipe remained, and the man she saved was protecting her daughter. Samuel said nothing more, only watching me drink, his eyes softened, devoid of their usual sternness. When I finished the last sip, I started to hand the flask back, but noticed the bandage on his shoulder was loose. He must have walked too quickly through the snow. The edge of the bandage had slipped, revealing a hint of the dark red wound. "Your bandage is loose," I said without thinking, reaching out to touch it, then quickly retracting my hand. We were too close enough that I could see the unmelted snowflakes on his cloak and smell the mix of snow and leather on him. This proximity was too dangerous, too forbidden. He seemed oblivious to my hesitation, tugging at the loose bandage with a look of slight annoyance. The wind caught it coming over. I paid no mind. I bit my lip, then stood up, taking clean cotton and the salve from my herb satchel freshly mixed this afternoon, still fragrant with mint. "I will wrap it again for you." My voice was soft, carrying a tension I hadn't realized. Otherwise, the wound will freeze and the pain will return. He did not refuse, only turning slightly to give me better access to his shoulder. I knelt before him, carefully unwrapping the old bandage. The dark red wound was exposed, looking better than this afternoon, but still unsettling. I dipped the salve and lightly applied it around the wound. My fingertip accidentally brushed his skin. His body suddenly stiffened, and I, too, felt a jolt, my finger instantly numb. The candlelight wavered, casting our shadows on the wall. My shadow knelt within his, as if firmly protected by him. I slowly wrapped the bandage, my gaze inevitably rising. He was staring into my eyes. His deep brown pupils held only my reflection, stripped of their usual authority, possessing a gentle warmth that unsettled me, like a candle flame on a snowy night. As I tied the bandage and prepared to withdraw my hand, he suddenly raised his own, his thumb gently wiping the corner of my mouth where a spot of soup remained. His motion was feather-light, the calluses of his thumb grazing my skin. I was paralyzed, watching him motionlessly. His eyes changed, moving from gentle to something deeper. His throat moved slightly, as if he meant to speak, but he retracted his hand, instead brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. His voice was a low whisper, "Soup stain." My cheeks instantly flushed. I quickly lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. The garret was terribly quiet, broken only by the sound of snow hitting the wood and the sizzle of the candle, and the frantic drumming of my own heart, which pounded against my eardrums. Just then, a dark shadow flashed past the window. It was swift, but I caught it. It was a figure in red Templar vestments, hugging the garret wall and moving away, holding something reflective, like a spyglass. "Do not move." Samuel suddenly pressed his hand on my shoulder, his voice instantly cold. He blew out the candle. The garret plunged into darkness, only the snow light filtering through the gaps to define his silhouette. He leaned close to my ear, his warm breath on my neck, tense. Silence. "It is Valen's spy, watching." I quickly covered my mouth, not daring to make a sound. I could hear the footsteps outside fading, yet I dared not relax. The spy had seen us in the garret, seen the candlelight. If Valen knew, he would find another excuse to seize me. Samuel did not immediately relight the candle. He maintained his protective posture, waiting a long moment before whispering, "Gone." He relit the candle. The warm yellow light returned, no longer gentle, but wary. Spies love the light on a snowy night, because it betrays those within. He stood, adjusting his cloak, and looked at me, a hint of apology in his eyes. "I cannot stay tonight. The spy will surely report back. Lock the door. Tell the steward if you need anything. I will see you tomorrow." I nodded, watching him walk toward the door. I suddenly remembered something and called out, "Samuel." He turned to look at me, the candlelight softening the scar on his left cheek. "What is it?" Be careful on your way back," I whispered, my heart rate spiking again. He paused, then smiled the first time I had ever seen him smile. It was slight, yet incredibly gentle, like sunshine on snow. "I will," he said. "From now on, when I come to the garret, we will light but one candle, enough to see your face and no more. That way, the watchers will see nothing." The door closed softly. I was alone again. I touched the corner of my mouth where he had wiped the stain, still feeling the warmth of his fingertip. My heart felt full, both aching and sweet. The snow continued to fall, but I no longer felt the cold. Even the garret wind seemed gentle. However, Valen's spy had seen us. What would he report? Would Valen devise a new plan to seize me? I looked at the flask on the table and the blanket on my shoulder. I suddenly felt that no matter the danger, as long as Samuel was here, I didn't have to be afraid. The deputy's doubt and compromise. "I help you because of the Duke, not because of you, but if your herbs can truly heal him, do not disappoint me. It was the hour of the dragon, 7:09 a.m. in late winter. The stone slabs of the training ground were still coated with a thin layer of frost that crunched beneath my steps like crushed ice. Wrapped in the thick wool blanket Samuel left, I still felt the cold penetrating my bones. Sleepless after the spy incident, I wanted to check the garden for the mint my mother once planted. I hadn't gone far before a sturdy figure blocked my path. It was Cain. He was in full silver armor, his shoulder plates still dusted with frost. He held a sheathed sword, standing stiffly as a pike. Seeing me, his brow immediately furrowed, his vigilance sharper than ever. Yet, instead of walking past as usual, he stepped forward, blocking the path to the garden. "Miss Alara," his voice was the crisp tone of a military man, laced with the morning chill. "You should not be here." He nodded toward the center of the training ground, where several soldiers in black uniforms were gathered, whispering amongst themselves. "The spy saw the Duke enter your garret last night. Now the whole keep is whispering that you used dark arts to bewitch the Duke, making him ignore the pressure from the church." My heart plummeted. The herb satchel in my hand nearly fell. The spy hadn't just seen the candlelight, he had seen Samuel entering the garret. The soldiers' gossip was surely planted by Valen's men, meant to sow discord between Samuel and his troops. I did not. I began to explain, but the words failed me. My proximity to Samuel had indeed gone beyond simple patron and sheltered, and to outsiders, it truly looked like dark enchantment. Cain did not let me finish. He turned and pointed toward the center of the training ground. "See for yourself." I followed his gaze, watching the soldiers part, revealing Samuel in the center. He wore no armor, only a black tunic. The bandage on his left shoulder stood out starkly in the morning light. He held a long sword, its tip resting on the ground, the frost on the blade gleaming cold. "My Lord Duke, the church has sent pressure. They say if you continue to shelter the witch, they will petition the king to revoke your command." A tall soldier stepped forward, his voice heavy with discontent. "We have fought under your banner for years, not to follow you in defying the church, only to lose our titles." Other soldiers chimed in, their voices sharp like needles piercing my ears. "That's right, my lord. She's just a witch, surrender her. Valen's men are watching outside. If this continues, none of us can even leave the keep gate." Samuel said nothing, only tightening his grip on the sword, his knuckles turning white. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over the soldiers, the coldness in his eyes chillier than the morning frost. The noise instantly ceased. Only the clanging of the wind against the armor remained. "Let any man dare call her a witch again," he suddenly raised his hand, plunging the long sword into the ground. The blade sank half an inch into the stone slab, making the surrounding frost particles jump. "He must first best my sword." His voice was low but carried absolute authority. The war scar on his left cheek was cold in the morning light. "The woman I, Samuel, protect is not for you to question. My decisions are not for the church to dictate." The soldiers were stunned by his presence. No one dared to speak again. They lowered their heads. Even the tallest soldier, who had voiced the most complaint, backed away, unable to meet Samuel's gaze. I stood still, watching Samuel's back. His shoulders were broad, the tunic outlining his lean musculature. Despite his old wound, he stood like an unshakable wall, blocking all doubt and discontent, shielding me behind him. Tears sprang to my eyes. I quickly wiped them away, afraid Cain would notice. To protect me, he was willing to argue with his own soldiers, risk losing his command, and stand against the entire church. I had worried he acted only out of old debt, but now I understood his protection went far beyond a simple debt of gratitude. "Do not stand there gawking." Cain's voice suddenly rang in my ear. He was beside me, holding a small cloth bag, still stained with earth. Come with me, do not let the Duke see. He pulled me quickly toward the edge of the training ground, toward the bushes, his grip firm. Behind the bushes was a small, cleared area, with signs of freshly turned earth. Cain knelt and opened the cloth bag. Inside was a pile of deep green seeds, exactly like the mint seeds I knew. These are the mint seeds your mother once planted in the keep's garden. His voice was low, his eyes glancing toward Samuel in the distance. I found them in the garden yesterday. I was going to discard them, but... He stopped, pushing the bag into my hand. Hide this. Do not let the Duke know I helped you. I help you because of the Duke, not because you are a herbalist. I gripped the cloth bag. The rough texture of the seeds pressed through the cloth, carrying the earthy smell of soil and life. Cain, who had always been so wary of me, had secretly kept my mother's seeds. He claimed it was for the Duke, but I knew in his heart, he was beginning to believe I was not the witch Valen claimed. Thank you, Cain, I whispered, my voice filled with gratitude. He did not reply, only standing up, glancing at Samuel, and then turning back to me. Do not disappoint me if your herbs truly heal the Duke's old wound. I will treat everything I've heard before as unsaid. With that, he turned and walked away, the clanging of his armor fading. Just as I was about to put the bag into my herb satchel, I felt a warm cloak settle on my shoulders. I turned to see Samuel standing behind me, still holding the long sword. The frost on the blade had melted, leaving faint water lines. The coldness he showed the soldiers was gone, replaced by a tenderness, like the morning sun through the mist, warming my heart. What did Cain tell you? He asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. He did not press, instead reaching out to adjust the collar of the cloak on my shoulder. It is cold this morning. Do not stay out too long. If you catch a chill, who will mix my salve? I looked into his eyes. His deep brown pupils reflected my image, the surrounding bushes, and the morning frost. A warmth spread through me. I am fine, I said, clutching the cloth bag. I just wanted to look for some mint seeds, so I can plant my own later. He smiled. It was the first time he had smiled at me. It was slight, yet incredibly gentle, like sunshine on snow. He reached out and lightly stroked my hair, as if touching a fragile treasure. Tell me if you want seeds. The keep's garden is empty. You can plant whatever you wish. He turned and called out to Cain, who was standing not far away. Cain. Watch over Alara's safety closely from now on. Do not let her wander the keep alone. Cain replied from a distance, his voice no longer holding discontent, but compliance. I stood close to Samuel, wrapped in his cloak, feeling his warmth. Suddenly, the soldiers' gossip and Valen's pressure no longer seemed so terrifying. As long as he was here, and with Cain's help, I felt I could safeguard my mother's herbal arts and prove I was no witch. Yet, Valen would not relent, and the soldiers' dissatisfaction would not easily fade. I looked at the seeds in my hand, recalling my mother's words, herbs must be planted slowly, and trust must be earned slowly. Perhaps, I needed time with Samuel, with Cain, and with the people in this keep to truly shed suspicion and stand together. Would you like me to analyze whether Cain has completely trusted Alara and if the soldiers' discontent will be utilized by Valen to create new conflict? The Inquisitor's trap of false witness. The floor of the Hall of Judgment is colder than the pyre. Fear not, I will stand beside you. Valen's brand will not touch you. The wind of the early spring, though finally free of winter's icy shards, carried a clinging dampness that made the begonia branches of the Duke's keep sway gently. I was in the garden turning the soil, preparing to plant the mint seeds Cain gave me, my fingertips stained with fresh earth and warmed by the sun. This was the most tranquil morning I'd had since arriving at the keep. The soldiers' murmurs had faded, Samuel's old wound was healing, and the bread from the steward even came with an extra slice of butter. The herbal manual in my pocket nudged me. I'd tossed it in after tidying it this morning. Something hard was pressed between the pages, but I hadn't looked closely, assuming it was just a dried petal my mother had left behind. This tranquility was shattered quickly by hurried footsteps. I looked up to see Martha stumbling into the garden. Her rough linen skirt was splattered with mud, her hair a tangle of wind-blown straw. She was clutching a crumpled paper packet to her chest, her other hand fiercely gripping a copper coin, its edges polished bright, etched with the distinctive cross of the church. Clearly one of Valen's tokens. She fell to her knees before me, tears streaming down her face, hitting the soil. Her hand, clutching the coin, was pale and strained. "Miss Alara, I have wronged you." Her voice was terribly hoarse. She grabbed my trouser leg, and the copper coin slipped from her fingers to land at my feet. "Valen took my son. He said if I didn't sign this paper, he would throw my boy into the ancient woods to feed the beasts. This copper coin is what he gave me, saying hold this to prove you obey, but I know, it is his mark to watch me." My heart sank. I knelt to steady her, picking up the coin. The cold metal seemed to retain the heat of Valen's palm. The reverse side was etched with a small V, his personal seal. My fingers traced the etching, then moved to the paper packet she held stiff, like folded documents. "What paper?" My voice shook with an ominous premonition. Martha tremblingly opened the packet. A yellowed parchment emerged, scribbled with a charcoal symbol, its lines crooked and edges smudged with ink. Next to it was a scrawled declaration: "Alara used this wicked sigil to curse the villagers, causing my daughter's death. I now attest to this truth." At the bottom right of the page, a blurred fingerprint was pressed, Martha's, uneven, clearly forced. It was a forgery. The symbol was not a rune I knew. My mother's runes were fluid and glowed faint green with herbal juice, but these lines were stiff and straight, with several deliberately added hooks, looking exactly like the marks Valen made with his searing brand. I clenched the parchment, my thumb brushing the rough paper, feeling Martha's tears wet the ink. "What else did he make you do?" "He wants me to point you out before the king. He said you drew this symbol when you gave my daughter the herbs." Martha's weeping intensified. Her other hand subconsciously reached for a cloth bundle at her waist. I glimpsed a dried flower fragment inside an edelweiss, unique to the Northlands. "My mother often carried them. I know you are good. My daughter died of the plague, it had nothing to do with you. But my son is only 5, and he was calling for your mint drops yesterday. I cannot lose him." I patted her back, my heart aching. Edelweiss was a Northlands flower. Valen's camp was south of the city. This flower could not have come from him. Perhaps Martha's son had secretly slipped it to her, or an old acquaintance had passed it on. I dared not ask. I folded the parchment and tucked it into my herb satchel, my fingers brushing the hard object in my pocket. It was still there, but there was no time to look. "Get up. We will go to Samuel. He will know what to do." As we reached the front hall, we saw Samuel in his black duke's formal attire, adjusting his cravat before a mirror. A silver badge was pinned to his left chest, the King's Defender of the Realm medal. The edge of the badge held a faint scratch. I remembered him saying it was from Valen's brand during a skirmish 20 years ago. Seeing us, his brow immediately furrowed. His gaze paused on Martha's tear-swollen eyes and the copper coin in my hand, and he instantly understood. "What has happened?" I handed him the forgery and the coin. Martha stammered out Valen's threats. When she mentioned the edelweiss, Samuel's eyes flickered, but he didn't press. Samuel looked at the symbol on the parchment, his knuckles turning white, the scratch on his badge prominent in the light. He has a flair for fiction. The lines of the rune are even wrong, yet he dares call it a dark sigil. He turned to the steward. "Prepare the carriage. I am going to see the king. Bring the wooden box from the third shelf of my study. It contains documents from 20 years ago." On the way to the king's palace, Samuel held my hand. His palm was warm, yet held a faint, imperceptible tremor. An elderly woman in a gray tunic, carrying an herb basket, flashed past the carriage window. A small copper bell hung from her basket identical to the one my mother used to carry. I started to point her out, but the old woman quickly disappeared into the alley, leaving only a faint scent of mint. "Do not worry," Samuel whispered, not noticing my glance. "The king is not a fool. Valen's trickery will not deceive him." But I knew the church's pressure was immense. Cain had said Valen had united 3 bishops to accuse Samuel of sheltering a witch and plotting treason. Even if the king did not believe it, he had to offer the church a concession. The king's palace was more imposing than the duke's keep. The white marble steps were straight and long, flanked by guards in golden armor, their shoulder plates bearing the inscription Templar Guard. Their eyes were cold as ice. As we entered the main hall, the king sat on his high throne, idly turning a jade thumb ring on his finger. The ring had a faint crack, which he rubbed constantly, as if hiding something. Valen stood below the throne in his deep crimson vestments. Seeing us, a subtle smirk crossed his lips, and he subtly pressed his left hand to his waist where a small clay pot was hidden. I recognized it was identical to the one he had used to pour the black liquid at the stake. "Samuel, you arrived precisely on time." The king's voice was grave. His gaze fell on me, scrutinizing, but then darted away as it brushed the copper coin in Samuel's hand. "Valen claims the witch you shelter cursed the villagers with a dark sigil, and we have a witness here. What say you?" Samuel presented the forgery, the coin, and the wooden box. His voice was firm. "Your Majesty, this is evidence fabricated by Valen, who coerced a villager. The symbol is not a rune. Alara knows this copper coin is Valen's personal property, bearing his private seal on the reverse. The box contains the roster of wounded soldiers from the Northlands 20 years ago, documenting my own treatment by Alara's mother. Her herbs only cure, they do not curse." He turned to Martha. "Martha, tell His Majesty. Did Valen force you to sign this paper? Did he give you that coin?" As Martha started to speak, Valen suddenly stepped forward, his eyes fixed on her like a snake, pressing the clay pot at his waist again. "Martha, have you forgotten your son is still in my hands? He was calling for the palace's honey water just yesterday." Martha froze, her lips moving silently. Her gaze fell on the crack in the king's jade thumb ring. She suddenly bowed her head, her shoulders trembling. The crack in the ring was identical to a flaw on her son's wooden toy sword. Did the king and Valen have another bargain? The king sighed, rising from the throne. The crack in the jade ring was prominent in the light. "Samuel, I know you protect her, but the church's pressure is too great. 3 bishops await outside for my decision." He paused, his gaze lingering on me before quickly shifting away. "Very well. I will grant Alara a public opportunity to defend herself. 3 days hence, in the church's hall of judgment, let her prove her herbs are not dark arts before all. If she cannot prove it." He did not finish, but a chill ran through me. I saw him give Valen a subtle look, a silent agreement. "Your Majesty." Samuel immediately stepped forward, his voice pleading. "The hall of judgment is Valen's ground. He will surely set a trap for Alara. The box also contains records of Valen replacing the soldiers' herbs that year. This is the best I can offer." The king waved a hand, the crack in the jade ring seemingly deepening. "You are dismissed. Bring Alara to the hall of judgment in 3 days." Leaving the palace, the dampness in the wind intensified, stinging my eyes. Samuel squeezed my hand, his voice apologetic. "I am sorry I could not persuade the king. He did not even look at the records in the wooden box." "It is not your fault." I shook my head, touching the herbal manual in my pocket. The hard object finally slipped out, a yellowed scrap of paper, bearing my mother's script. "Valen replaced Northland's herbs, substituting withered mint for fresh, causing the condition of 3 soldiers to worsen. Recorded in early spring. So this was the hard thing I had felt. It was folded so small I hadn't noticed it. Valen will surely set a trap in the Hall of Judgment. He won't let me leave alive. As we reached the Duke's keep, Cain rushed in, his armor dusty. A fresh burn mark, a raw welt identical in shape to Valen's brand, marred his left wrist. My Lord Duke, I found proof. The cursed villagers Valen spoke of are all vagrants he paid. I found their receipts for the silver, bearing their fingerprints. He pulled a stack of papers from his coat. As he handed them to Samuel, I saw his hand tremble. But, when I tried to enter the palace to give them to His Majesty, the Templar guards blocked me. They said no one could enter without Valen's permission. Those soldiers on their wrists, they had the same burn marks as mine. He anticipated this. Samuel's face darkened. He walked to the window, looking at the begonia tree outside. The petals were stained with a sticky black residue, similar to the black liquid Valen had poured. He intends to leave Alara without recourse in the Hall of Judgment. The vagrant's burn marks, and this residue on the petals, are all his contingency plans. I walked to his side, clutching my mother's herb satchel. It held the forgery, the copper coin, my mother's note, and the mint seeds from Cain. Each was a clue, but I didn't know if they would be useful in the Hall of Judgment. I am not afraid to go, my voice trembled, yet held a thread of resolve. I can use my herbs to prove I am no witch. But I fear Valen will use the brand to force a confession, as he did to my mother. Samuel turned, gently wiping the dampness from the corner of my eye. His fingertip was warm, conveying a reassuring strength, brushing against the edge of the note sticking out of my pocket. Do not fear, he said, his eyes unwavering. The floor of the Hall of Judgment is colder than the pyre, but I will stand beside you, and I will not leave your side. Valen's brand will not touch you. No one shall harm a hair on your head. Your mother's note, and that copper coin, will be our evidence. I leaned into his embrace, hearing the strong beat of his heart, smelling the leather and sunlight on him. My anxiety lessened. But I knew the trial in 3 days would be a difficult battle. Valen's forgery, the bribed vagrants, the marked soldiers, and the secret behind the crack in the king's jade thumb ring. Could we win? And would the old woman from the alley be an old friend of my mother, able to testify for us? The confrontation of runes in the Hall of Judgment. My rune heals, it does not curse Valen. Do you dare let me treat that burn on your hand with my herbal juice? The sun of the early spring noon should have been warm, but the stone walls of the Hall of Judgment filtered it down to cold light. I stood in the center of the hall. The stone floor was chillingly cold, every step felt like treading on ice. The hall was immense. Rusty chains hung from the vaulted ceiling, holding a few precarious candlesticks. The flame flickered violently in the draught, casting my shadow on the wall, shrinking and expanding, as if torn by an invisible hand. Valen sat on the judgment chair on the left side of the high platform, holding the familiar searing brand. The evil symbol on its tip glowed dull red. The heat and stench of burning metal wafted toward me, catching in my throat. The king sat in the main chair, the crack in his jade thumb ring particularly noticeable in the candlelight. He rubbed the crack incessantly, yet avoided my gaze as if deliberately looking away. Cain stood behind Samuel, his bandaged left wrist exposed, the clanging of his armor quieter than usual, clearly vigilant against Valen's movements. Bring the witnesses forward. Valen's voice was sharp, like metal scraping metal. 2 Templar soldiers escorted 3 vagrants into the hall. They wore tattered gray tunics, and fresh burn marks, identical to the pattern of Valen's brand, were visible on their wrists. One short vagrant dared not look up, his eyes darting, his hand instinctively reaching for his waist where half a mint drop, the kind I gave Martha's son yesterday, was hidden. Tell us, were you not cursed by this witch with a dark sigil? Valen struck the brand on the stone table. Sparks flew, making the vagrants tremble. The short vagrant stammered, "Yes." She drew a symbol that made my son fall ill, and she said he wouldn't be cured unless I gave her silver. His voice shook, yet his eyes darted to me, as if apologizing. I tightened my grip on the herb satchel in my sleeve. Inside lay my mother's note, Valen's copper coin, and a small jar of freshly mixed mint salve. "You lie." My voice was soft, yet startlingly clear in the silent hall. "Your son suffered from the cold, not a curse. The mint drop at your waist, I gave it to Martha for your son yesterday, saying it would ease his cough. Have you forgotten?" The short vagrant's face instantly went white. He snatched his hand away from his waist. Valen's face darkened. He raised the brand as if to strike the vagrant. "You dare to lie." Samuel suddenly stepped forward, his scabbard blocking the brand. Does the Inquisitor intend to conceal something by abusing his own witness in the Hall of Judgment? The king cleared his throat, breaking the deadlock. "Ilara, you claim you did not curse anyone. How do you prove your herbs are not dark arts?" I looked up at the king, then at the clay pot at Valen's waist. It surely held the black liquid he used to feed the beasts. "I can use my herbs to heal wounds," I said, taking the mint salve from my satchel. "I can cure that vagrant's son, and Captain Kane's burn mark, with this salve. Dark arts only harm, but my herbs save lives. That is the best proof." Valen suddenly laughed, a grim, twisted sound. "Who knows if you have mixed dark arts into that salve? If you are truly innocent, draw the rune your mother taught you. If you cannot draw it, it is a confession." He thrust the brand toward me, the heat searing my cheek. "Or, draw a curse sigil, and prove you wield dark arts." My heart sank. Valen was being deliberate. He knew I would not draw a curse sigil, and if I drew a healing rune, he would claim it was dark arts. But I could not surrender. My mother's note was in my hand. Valen's wickedness in replacing the herbs must be exposed today. I took the small porcelain bottle from my satchel and poured out a drop of mint juice. Dipping my fingertip in the pale green liquid, I began to draw slowly on the stone table before me. My mother's healing rune was fluid and winding, like running water. As I completed the final stroke, a faint green shimmer emanated from the lines, starkly visible against the cold gray stone. "Dark arts. This is dark arts." Valen roared, raising his brand to smash the rune. Just then, Kane rushed forward, presenting his burned left wrist toward the rune. The faint light fell on the burn. The red, swollen wound faded at a visible rate. Even the scar lightened. "It is not dark arts." Kane's voice was filled with excitement. "My wound is healed. This is healing." The Hall of Judgment erupted in chaos. The king rose from his throne, staring at the rune on the stone table, then at Kane's wrist. The crack in his jade thumb ring seemed more prominent. Valen's face was ashen, but he clung to his composure. "It is a mere trick. That vagrant's son is still feverish. If you can heal him, I will believe you." "I healed him long ago," an aged voice suddenly announced from the hall entrance. I turned to see the old woman in the gray tunic from the alley. She was holding Martha's son. The boy's small face was flushed, but he was smiling, clutching half an edelweiss flower. "This boy's fever broke yesterday." Valen hid him away and forced Martha to lie. The old woman walked to the center of the hall, handing the child to Martha. She took a cloth bag from her coat. "I am an herbalist from the Northlands. 20 years ago, I treated the wounded alongside Ilara's mother. This contains the records of Valen replacing the herbs. He substituted withered mint for fresh, causing the condition of 3 soldiers to worsen until they perished." Samuel immediately took the bag and showed it to the king. "Your Majesty, this is identical to the note my mother left." Valen not only coerced false testimony but also killed soldiers 20 years ago. He is the true villain. Valen completely lost control. He lunged, seizing Martha's son, placing a dagger to the child's throat. Do not come closer. If you press me further, I will kill him. Your Majesty, if you let me go, I will drop the charges against Samuel for sheltering the witch, and I will help you stabilize the church. The king hesitated. He looked at the child, then at Valen, turning the jade thumb ring frantically. I clenched the herbal juice in my hand. The faint shimmer had not yet dissipated. If I drew a protective rune, I could save the child, but Valen would accuse me of dark arts. Samuel discreetly reached for the sword at his waist, his eyes vigilant, but afraid to move. The child was still in Valen's grasp. I took a step forward, looking at Valen's hand. A faint old scar was visible on his thumb web, a burn mark similar to the one he had inflicted on Samuel. Valen, do you dare let me treat that burn on your hand with my herbal juice? My voice was firm. The pale green shimmer on my fingertip reflected on the stone table. That wound was burned 20 years ago, and it has never healed. You cannot sleep when it rains, am I right? My mother once said you replaced the herbs because you could not heal your own wound, and you envied her herbal art. Valen's body froze. The dagger nearly slipped from his hand. His secret had been exposed. The hall of judgment was terrifyingly silent, broken only by the sizzle of the candles and the child's cries. I looked at Valen, then at Samuel. One thought filled my mind: today, I must not only prove I am no witch but also clear my mother's name and make Valen pay for his crimes. But Valen would not yield easily. The dagger remained at the child's throat, his eyes wide with madness. The king still hesitated, unsure whether to side with Valen or with us. The old woman subtly walked beside me, handing me an edelweiss flower. This was your mother's favorite flower. She said edelweiss brings courage. It is time to use it now. I took the edelweiss. Dewdrops on the petals mixed with the herbal juice on my fingertips, and the light grew brighter. I slowly raised my hand, preparing to draw the protective rune. Even if Valen accused me of dark arts, I had to save the child. Samuel seemed to read my intention. He stepped forward, shielding me with his body. He whispered, "Do not panic. I will take care of this." Would you like me to analyze the true identity of the old woman, and what Valen's next move will be under the current high-stakes situation? Betrayal in the prisoner cart. Martha's betrayal was not born of hate, it was fear. But fear not, I will follow the cart. I will not let you die in the ancient woods. The candlelight still wavered in the hall of judgment. Valen's dagger was pressed against Martha's son's throat, and the child's cries were like fine needles, tightening everyone's nerves. The old woman tried to approach but was blocked by Templar guards. Samuel's hand was on his sword hilt, his knuckles white, yet he dared not move the slightest twitch, and Valen's dagger could slice the boy's skin. I clutched the edelweiss, the herbal juice on my fingertips still faintly green, calculating how to draw a protective rune. But before I could raise my hand, Martha suddenly lunged, grasping my arm with unnatural strength. Tears were still on her face, her eyes terribly red, but she screamed, "Go! You must go with them." "Martha?" I was stunned, trying to pull away. She dragged me relentlessly toward the hall entrance. "What are you doing? Your son is still in Valen's hands. I have no choice." Her voice was choked with tears, yet laced with desperate resolve. "Valen said he would release my son if I put you on the cart. Ilara, I know I wrong you, but I cannot lose him. He is all I have left." Her nails dug into my arm, making me wince. But I saw her other hand, hidden behind her back, quickly slip something into my palm, a broken piece of wood, carved with a small sun emblem. It was a fragment from her son's toy sword. I understood instantly. She wasn't truly betraying me, she was giving me a clue. This fragment might help me find where her son was hidden. I was about to nod when two men in black tunics rushed in. The copper coin emblem of Valen was pinned to their collars, they were clearly his close confidants. One grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the door, while the other called to Valen, "My lord, the prisoner cart is waiting outside. We will take her now." Valen's dagger eased slightly but still held the child. "Guard her closely. Do not let her escape. I will deal with the matters here and then join you in the ancient woods." His eyes fixed on me, like a viper tracking its prey. "This time, no one can save you." Samuel immediately drew his sword, trying to follow, but was surrounded by several Templar soldiers. "My lord Duke, do not waste your strength." The soldiers raised their pikes. "The king has not ordered her release. If you force your way out, you defy the crown." Cain tried to assist Samuel but was blocked by more soldiers. The burn on his left wrist slowed his swing. He could only watch as I was dragged out of the Hall of Judgment. A black prisoner cart stood outside. Its wooden planks were rough and smeared with dried mud. The iron axle of the wheels was rusty, a cart clearly used for long-term transport of criminals. The confidants shoved me inside, slamming the door shut with a loud clunk. The gaps between the wooden planks were narrow, allowing only blurred light. The cart lurched and started moving. The clack-clack of the wheels on the stone pavement hammered against my heart. I leaned against the cold wood, taking out the wooden fragment Martha had slipped me. The sun emblem was clear, its edges worn smooth, the mark of a much-handled toy. She wanted me to know the child was hidden somewhere with a sun marker. But the ancient woods were vast. Where would such a marker be? I checked my herb satchel. My mother's note, Valen's copper coin, and the mint salve were still there. The edelweiss, crumpled in my fist, had lost its dew, yet retained a cooling scent. The cart sped up. Wind whipped through the plank gaps, carrying the damp smell of the ancient woods. I knew they were taking me to the woods, to the place where my mother had been burned. Valen had said he wanted me to die in the herb patch, just like my mother. He wanted to completely destroy her legacy, and all evidence of his crimes. "Don't think of escaping," the driver's voice came from the front, laced with a cold sneer. "The lock on this cart is specially made. Even your herb arts won't open it. Lord Valen awaits you in the ancient woods. Your mother's herbs will serve as your kindling." My heart sank. The driver was loyal to Valen and would not help me. I was on my own. I tried to use the herbal juice on my fingertip to draw a simple unlocking rune on the wood. But halfway through, the cart violently hit a bump. The juice spilled, leaving only a faint green streak. Just then, I heard the familiar sound of hooves behind us, Samuel. I quickly pressed against the gap in the wood and saw a black figure on horseback in the distance, riding in pursuit, followed by Cain and several soldiers. Their armor flashed silver in the sunlight, like a line of advancing light. "Samuel!" I cried out, striking the wood. "I am here." The driver glanced back, swore, and violently whipped the horse. The cart bolted faster. Samuel's voice drifted back on the wind, filled with urgency. "Elara. Do not be afraid. I will catch you. Do not let Valen's men harm you." Watching his approaching figure, tears suddenly fell. He had come. Defying the king's order, confronting Valen's confidants, he had come. I gripped the wooden fragment. A surge of resolve filled me. Martha's son needed saving, my mother's name needed clearing. I could not die in the ancient woods. The cart left the city. Houses grew sparse, replaced by dense forest. The scent of herbs in the wind intensified. I knew we were nearing my mother's old patch. The driver suddenly stopped the cart, yelling back at me, "We're here. Lord Valen is waiting inside." Walk in yourself, don't make us drag you. I remained still, leaning against the wood, listening to the hooves closing in. Samuel was near. The driver grew impatient. He got down and reached for the keys. Before he could turn the lock, an arrow suddenly shot through the air, lodging in his hand. It was one of Samuel's soldiers. I glimpsed Samuel charging on horseback, his sword blade gleaming cold in the sun. Cain and the soldiers surrounded the driver. "Elara, fear not. I am here." Samuel's voice was right outside the cart. He reached for the lock but found it specialized, the key still in the driver's hand. The driver screamed in pain, yet remained defiant. "Lord Valen will not let you go. There are beasts he bred in the ancient woods. None of you will escape." Beasts? My heart tightened. Leon had mentioned Valen feeding beasts in the ancient woods. He had planned this, intending to have the beasts kill us all to silence the truth. I quickly took out my mother's note. Besides documenting Valen's herb replacement, a small line of script was written at the bottom: "Beasts in the deep woods fear the smell of mint." My mother had known. I quickly took the mint salve from my satchel and squeezed some into the gap in the wood. The clean scent of mint wafted out. Moments later, a low growl sounded in the distance, but the creatures did not approach. They truly feared the mint. Samuel heard the growls, too. He yelled back to Cain, "Take the soldiers and block the beasts. I will get Elara out." Cain nodded, raising his pike. The soldiers lined up, their pike tips facing the direction of the growls. The burn on Cain's left wrist glowed red in the sun, but not a single man retreated. Samuel snatched the key from the driver. His hand trembled slightly, but he quickly unlocked the cart. He reached out, his palm warm with sweat from the chase. "Come quickly. We must leave this place. Valen is surely waiting deeper in the woods." I grabbed his hand and leaped from the cart. My feet hit the ground just as Valen's roar echoed from the deep woods, "Samuel! You dare thwart me? I will ensure you all die here." Salvation in the ancient herb patch. The wind in the ancient woods carried the rank scent of decaying leaves, rustling the branches overhead. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting broken patches of light on the ground like scattered silver coins. Samuel shielded me with his body. I still clutched the crumpled edelweiss, and the mint juice on my fingers was cool, but it gave me courage. My mother's note was true. The beasts feared the scent. Valen stepped out from behind a tree, his red vestments stained with mud and grass. His left arm was bleeding, cut by the struggling driver after the arrow hit. He desperately clutched the black clay pot, the dark liquid at its mouth dripping through his fingers onto the dead leaves with a faint sizzle. "You think you can escape?" His voice trembled, yet was wild with madness. "I fed the beasts in these woods. If I pour this black liquid, they will rush you like fiends and tear you to shreds." He raised the clay pot, ready to pour the black liquid onto the ground. Samuel immediately pushed me further behind him, drawing his sword to block Valen. The blade flashed cold in the dappled light. "Valen, you have lost. The people in the Hall of Judgment know your crimes. The king will not believe you. Further resistance will only make your end uglier." "Lost? I have not lost." Valen suddenly laughed, tears streaming from his eyes. "I spent 20 years clawing my way to Inquisitor, only to find the way to control the beasts. If I kill you all and burn the witch's corpse, who will know I replaced the herbs and killed the soldiers?" He slammed the clay pot onto the ground. The black liquid splattered, spreading like a black serpent deep into the trees. Soon, the beasts' roars echoed louder and more frantic than before. Samuel's face tightened. He yelled to Cain, "Take the soldiers and hold the path. Do not let the beasts charge us." Cain nodded instantly, raising his pike. The soldiers formed a line, their pike tips pointed toward the direction of the roars. The burn on Kane's left wrist was red in the sunlight, but not one man retreated. I reached into my herb satchel for the mint salve. Most of it remained, enough to repel several beasts. But Valen's black liquid seemed to madden them further. The roars grew closer, and the fetid smell of their bodies permeated the air. Samuel, I have a solution. I tugged at his cloak, wiping a touch of the mint salve onto his scabbard, drawing a simple protective rune. Mother said mint calms the beasts. I can draw a large calming rune that should stop them. Samuel looked back at me, his eyes filled with worry, but he nodded. Be careful. Do not let even the shadow of a beast touch you. He took a step forward, his sword pointed at Valen. I will watch him. Focus on your rune. I knelt down, my mint-stained fingertip drawing slowly on the ground. My mother's calming rune was more complex than the healing one. Its lines had to flow like water, wrapping around the tree trunks to carry the scent further. Pale green light seeped from the lines, crawling along the pattern of the dead leaves. The clean scent of mint gradually overpowered the black liquid stench. The beast's roars in the distance indeed softened, becoming less frantic. Valen saw the rune's glow, his eyes turning red. Dark arts. More dark arts. He suddenly pulled a dagger from his robes, trying to circle behind me to attack. Samuel's reaction was swift. He spun and slapped the dagger away with his sword. The tip sliced a deep wound on Valen's right shoulder, and dark red blood immediately stained his vestment. Move again, and I will sever your hand. Samuel's voice was icy cold, the war scar on his left cheek gleaming in the light. 20 years ago, you killed 3 soldiers by replacing their herbs. Now you coerce false witness to burn Alara. Today, your crimes will be judged. Valen collapsed, clutching his shoulder, still shouting defiantly. I did nothing wrong. It was the witch's mother who blocked my path. It is all of you who shelter her. I only wanted to live, to climb higher. He suddenly looked into the depths of the woods, a strange light flashing in his eyes. You think you stopped the beasts? I have a cub hidden. It does not fear mint. And now. Before he could finish, a small whimper sounded, the cry of a beast cub. I looked where the sound came from and saw a small black beast huddled beneath an old tree. Its left front paw was tangled in vines, its eyes wide with fear, its fur stained with Valen's black liquid. Valen had controlled the cub with the black liquid, intending for it to ambush us. But the cub was clearly afraid of the adults and dared not move. You won't even spare a cub. I stood and walked to the small beast. It shrank back warily but did not attack. I took the mint salve and gently rubbed it onto the fur stained by the black liquid. Do not be afraid. This will help remove that strange smell. As the salve touched its fur, the cub whimpered comfortably and stopped trembling, instead rubbing its head against my hand. The faint green glow of the rune, carried by the cub's fur, spread to the adult beasts in the distance. Their roaring completely stopped. They slowly emerged from the trees, circling the cub. The ferocity was gone from their eyes, replaced by a gentle curiosity. They had come for the cub, not to attack us. Valen's black liquid had only temporarily enraged them, and the rune and the mint had restored their true nature. No. Impossible. Valen slumped to the ground, staring at the docile beasts, his eyes filled with despair. They obeyed me. They should have killed you all. Kane and several soldiers walked over, leading a small figure, Martha's son. The boy clutched the half-fragment of the wooden sword. Seeing Martha running from the distance she had followed Samuel's soldiers, he rushed into her arms. Mother. I was scared. Martha held her son, tears falling onto his hair, continuously whispering, I am sorry, Mother was late. The child was found near the sunstone over there. Kane pointed to a circular rock not far away, its marking strikingly similar to the sun emblem on Martha's fragment. Valen tied him behind the rock with vines. Thankfully, the pattern on the fragment alerted us. I looked at the sunstone, then at the fragment in Martha's hand, a sudden warmth filling my heart. The fragment she slipped me truly was the key to finding her son. My mother had said, herbs must be planted slowly, and trust must be earned slowly. Martha's guilt, Cain's change of heart, and these docile beasts were all the beginnings of trust. Samuel walked up to Valen, pointing his sword at him. "What say you now?" Valen did not resist, only lowering his head, his shoulders trembling. He finally knew his crimes could no longer be hidden. Cain ordered the soldiers to bind Valen and prepare to take him back to the city for the king's judgment. The cub and the adult beasts slowly walked deeper into the ancient woods. The cub looked back at me, as if thanking me, before disappearing into the foliage. I knelt in my mother's old herb patch. The soil carried a familiar scent, though the weeds were tall, hiding where the mint had once grown. Samuel walked over, handing me a bundle of fresh mint seeds, the ones Cain had hidden for me. He said, "This is your mother's legacy. They should grow here again. Let us plant them together." I looked up at him. Sunlight filtered through the leaves onto his face, softening the war scar on his left cheek. His eyes were filled with gentleness. He nodded, kneeling to scatter the seeds with me. Our fingertips occasionally brushed, conveying a gentle warmth. The scent of mint in the wind grew stronger, mixing with the smell of the soil, like my mother's herb patch. I knew my mother's name was finally cleared. Her herbal arts would no longer be seen as dark magic. This patch, this ancient woods, was finally ready for a new beginning. Yet, a faint worry lingered. Valen was caught, but could his claim of others in the church protecting him be true? Would the church still pursue me? Samuel seemed to read my mind. He reached out and stroked my hair. "Do not worry. The king has ordered a full investigation of the church. No one will dare bother you again. From now on, I will protect this herb patch with you. Would you like me to analyze whether the healed beast cub will return to protect Alara and the herb patch from residual church threats, or if Alara and Samuel will discover more secrets like hidden manuals or letters left by her mother while rebuilding the herb patch?" The king's repentance and the aftermath of the church. The bishop's secret letter speaks of burning the herb patch on the 3rd day of the 3rd month. They have not given up. They mean to destroy everything before Alara can restore the herbal art. It was the hour of the rooster 5:07 p.m. in early spring. The sunset stained the white marble steps of the king's palace a warm gold. The wind carried the faint fragrance of begonias beneath the palace walls, yet could not disperse the heavy air within the hall. Valen was guarded in the center of the hall, the bloodstains on his red vestment now black. His head was bowed low, only shaking involuntarily when the word church was mentioned. The king sat on the throne, holding a stack of yellowed letters. The crack in his jade thumb ring was prominent in the setting sun. He did not rub the crack as before, but placed the letters heavily on the stone table, his voice carrying suppressed fury. "Valen, did you truly think I was ignorant of your collusion with the southern bishop? These letters clearly stated all. You used the beasts to threaten the villagers, you used the witch hunt to weaken Samuel's military power, and you even plotted to poison my wine and have the bishop seize my throne." Valen sharply looked up, his face ashen. "Your Majesty, the bishop forced me. He said if I did not comply, he would kill my family." His voice trembled. He reached out to grasp the king's robe but was held back by a soldier. "I was wrong. I beg your Majesty to spare my life." "Spare you?" The king stood up, the jade ring slamming onto the letters. 20 years ago, you replaced herbs, causing the deaths of 3 soldiers. Now, you coerce false witness, abduct children, and incite beasts to attack. How many families have you ruined? How many good people like Alara's mother have you falsely accused as witches? Do you deserve mercy? I stood beside Samuel, watching the scene, a sense of relief washing over me. The king's earlier hesitation was not biased toward Valen but fear of the bishop's threats. The letters even contained the bishop's threats against the king's young daughter, filled with brazen ambition. Samuel quietly took my hand. The warmth of his palm reassured me. He whispered, "Fear not. The truth is finally out." Cain walked to the center of the hall, presenting another stack of papers. "Your Majesty, these were found in Valen's Inquisitor residence. They document the truth of his witch hunts over the years. The so-called witches were either herbalists who knew his crimes or villagers who refused his bribes. And this," he took out a small box containing several black pellets, "is the feed Valen used for the beasts. It is mixed with the church's holy water, identical to the pellets found in the cave in the ancient woods." The king's expression grew darker as he examined the evidence. Finally, he bowed deeply to me. "Miss Alara, I wronged you, and I wronged your mother. Because my daughter was threatened, I dared not publicly oppose the church, causing you so much grief. From this day forth, I order the immediate cessation of all baseless witch hunts, recognize the value of natural herbal arts, and clear the names of all those falsely accused." I quickly steadied him. "Your Majesty need not apologize. As long as no one ever again treats herbs as dark arts, my mother's soul will be at peace." I took my mother's note from my satchel and handed it to the king. "This is the note my mother wrote documenting Valen's deceit. I give it to your Majesty, hoping it will serve as evidence for a full investigation into the church's crimes." The king accepted the note, his fingertip gently tracing the script. His eyes were slightly red. "I will make this evidence public so that all in the kingdom shall know the truth. Miss Alara, I have one more request. I hope you will establish a rune academy in the city, to teach common people herbal arts and protective runes, so more may know that the power of nature is for guardianship, not for fear." I paused, then nodded. "I am willing. Only, I need a patch of land to grow the herbs and to demonstrate their use to the children. The herb patch in the ancient woods shall be yours." The king immediately declared. "I will order the soldiers to guard it. No one shall damage it. Samuel," he looked at the duke beside him, "you must assist Alara. You must protect her safety and help her establish the academy." Samuel bowed. "Your servant obeys." He looked back at me, his eyes filled with tenderness, like the warm sunset on my skin. Just then, a soft sound came from the hall doors. The old woman walked in, carrying a cloth bag. She wore a clean blue dress, her hair neatly combed, holding a small bouquet of fresh edelweiss. "Your Majesty, I have something for Miss Alara." She walked up to me and opened the bag. Inside was a yellowed herbal manual, with a mint sprig embroidered on the cover. "This is what Alara's mother left in the Northlands. It contains many difficult remedies and ways to counter the black liquid. I was her companion then, and I hid this manual all these years, fearing the church would find it." I took the manual, my fingers brushing the embroidered mint. Tears suddenly fell. The pages were brittle but still carried my mother's scent. The script inside was identical to the note I held. The last page contained a small map of the herb patch, marked with the note, "Detoxifying herb in the deep woods, antidote to the black liquid." "Thank you," I choked out. The old woman patted my shoulder. "Your mother once said her daughter would surely inherit her herbal art and make the power of nature known to many. Now, you have done it." The atmosphere in the hall gradually eased. Valen was led away to the dungeon by the soldiers. The king began discussing the clearance of the church remnants with his ministers. Samuel and I walked beneath the begonia trees outside. The sunset stretched our shadows long, intertwining them like inseparable threads. "You do not have to hide anymore." Samuel stroked my hair, his fingers brushing the wisps near my ear. "You can grow your herbs openly, teach the children runes. No one will ever dare call you witch again." I leaned into his embrace, smelling the mix of leather and begonia blossoms, filled with a sense of security. But Valen said the bishop has accomplices. Will they still come after us? I was still worried. The church's influence was deeply entrenched in the kingdom and could not be purged quickly. Before Samuel could answer, Cain rushed over, holding a crumpled piece of paper. My Lord Duke, Miss Alara. We found this hidden in the sole of Valen's boot. It is a secret letter from the southern bishop to Valen. He handed over the paper. The handwriting was frantic, but the key sentence was clear. Burn the herb patch on the 3rd day of the 3rd month. The witch must not be allowed to restore the herbal art and end our troubles. My heart plummeted. The 3rd day of the 3rd month, that was 3 days away. They hadn't given up. They intended to destroy the last vestige of my mother's memory before I could restore the herb patch. Samuel's face tightened. He squeezed my hand. Do not worry. We have 3 days, enough time to prepare. I will assign soldiers to guard the ancient woods. Cain will track the bishop. They will not succeed. The sun sank lower. The palace candles lit up one by one. The warm yellow light shone on the begonias but could not penetrate the worry in my heart. How extensive was the bishop's power? Did they have other schemes? Would the herb patch 3 days hence be another crisis? Morning light and eternal guardianship in the herb patch. Every spring hereafter, the herb patch will sprout new life. We will draw runes here, teach the herbs, guard each other, and guard this land where truth was reborn. The dawn of the 3rd day of the 3rd month came exceptionally early. Before the sky was fully light, points of firelight already glowed in the ancient woods herb patch. I knelt where my mother once planted mint, my fingertips stained with salve mixed with the detoxifying herb juice, drawing protective runes on the surrounding tree trunks. The pale green shimmer spread along the wood grain, forming a soft armor that encased the entire herb patch. Samuel stood on a nearby rise, his black cloak snapping in the morning wind. He was directing the soldiers to set up defenses, the war scar on his left cheek catching the faint morning light. Every command was clear and decisive. Miss Alara, here is the freshly ground mint powder. Tell me if it is enough. Martha's voice came from behind. She carried a cloth sack filled with fine green powder. Her son, little Tom, stood beside her, clutching a handful of freshly picked edelweiss, carefully presenting them to me. Sister, this is for you. Mother says edelweiss brings courage. I accepted the edelweiss. Morning dew still clung to the petals, cool in my palm. Thank you, Tom. I ruffled his hair, noticing half a wooden fragment pinned to Martha's sleeve, the very sun emblem piece she had slipped me, now strung into a small pendant. You made the fragment into a pendant? Yes, Martha touched the pendant, her eyes filled with gentleness. It is a marker of Tom's rescue, and my proof of apology to you. I will come to the herb patch every day from now on to help you plant and dry the salve, and I will never let fear guide me again. The sound of hooves approached. Cain rode up, the burn on his left wrist now scabbed over. He held a map. The clanging of his armor was notably lighter as he dismounted. My Lord Duke, Miss Alara. We found them. The southern bishop has 20 confidants, hiding in a cave on the west side of the ancient woods. They carried no torches, but many jars of black liquid. It seems they intend to poison the herb patch first, then take Miss Alara as a hostage. Samuel immediately walked to the map, his finger landing on the cave's location. Cain, take 10 soldiers and circle behind the cave to block their retreat. The rest follow me and hold the eastern path to the herb patch. They must pass here to reach it. Alara, you stay within the rune circle. Do not come out. I will stop them. I nodded but handed him the mint salve from my waist. Take this. The black liquid can burn skin. The salve will soothe it. And this, I took the last page of my mother's manual, showing the drawing of the detoxifying herb. The herb is in the rock crevices on the east side of the woods. If they attack with the black liquid, mix the herb juice with water and splash it will neutralize the poison. Samuel took the manual page, his finger gently brushing my written note. He suddenly pulled me into his embrace. The morning light caught his hair, turning it a pale gold. His voice was softer than the morning dew. After the bishop is dealt with, we will turn over the herb patch, plant your mother's mint, and the edelweiss you like. As I started to nod, a rush of footsteps sounded from the east. Cain's voice immediately rang out, "They are here. Prepare." Samuel released me, drawing his sword to block the path before the rune circle. The blade flashed cold in the morning light. The soldiers raised their pikes. Martha quickly shielded little Tom, yet she did not retreat. She held a small spade, the one meant for turning the soil, gripping it tightly like a weapon. The bishop emerged from behind the trees, wearing purple church vestments with gold-threaded crosses at the collar. He carried a black liquid pot larger than Valen's, and his confidants held daggers, their eyes vicious. "Surrender, Ilara." The bishop's voice was heavier than Valen's, carrying an undeniable pressure. "Otherwise, I will pour this black liquid onto the herb patch, and this wretched land will never sprout anything again. Do you think you will succeed?" Samuel stepped forward, his sword pointing at the bishop. "Valen is captured. Your scheme is known throughout the kingdom. Further resistance will only bring you the same end." The bishop suddenly laughed, a mad, twisted sound. "I am not like Valen. If I capture the witch, the king will fear me. His daughter is still in my power." He raised the pot, ready to pour the black liquid onto the herb patch. I instantly raised my hand. The rune's faint glow on my fingertips flared. The protective runes drawn on the tree trunks instantly connected, forming a transparent barrier. The black liquid splashed against it, making a sizzle sound before dissolving into vapor. "Impossible." The bishop's face paled, and his confidants panicked. Just then, the beast's roars sounded from the distance. I looked back and saw the black cub I had healed running from the woods, followed by a dozen adult beasts. Their eyes were a gentle amber in the morning light. They roared at the bishop's confidants but did not charge, clearly coming to our aid. "It's the cub. They came to help us." Little Tom excitedly cried out. Martha sighed in relief, the spade no longer trembling in her hand. The bishop's confidants recoiled in terror. A few dropped their daggers and tried to flee, but were blocked by Cain's soldiers, who had circled behind the cave, trapping all the confidants. "You have lost." I stepped out from the rune circle, holding my mother's manual. "Your black liquid cannot harm the herb patch. Your confidants cannot escape. The king's daughter was rescued long ago. You thought you could coerce the king, but you forgot that once the truth is seen, it can never be hidden again." The bishop tried to resist, but Samuel's sword knocked the pot from his hand and pressed against his throat. "Surrender now, and you may keep your life." The bishop's shoulders slumped. He slowly lowered his dagger. His confidants surrendered. Soldiers moved in to bind them. The morning light no longer held the previous menace, only the silence of despair. By the time the soldiers escorted the bishop away, the sun was fully risen. Sunlight dappled the herb patch through the leaves, softening the rune's glow. The clean scent of mint mixed with the earthy smell of soil, like my mother's presence. Martha and the villagers arrived, carrying hoes and seeds. Little Tom ran ahead, kneeling beside me to turn the soil. "Sister, let us plant the mint. I want to learn herbal arts from you and help cure people." Samuel walked over, holding a handful of new herb seeds sent by the king, including mint, marigold, and the detoxifying herb from my mother's manual. "His Majesty said this herb patch is now under your care. He will send artisans to build the rune academy so you can teach more people the herbal arts." He knelt, scattering the seeds with me, his hand occasionally touching mine, carrying the morning's warmth. And I requested leave from His Majesty not to resign my dukedom, but to move my keep near the ancient woods. I can protect the city and be with you. I was stunned, looking up at him. The morning light fell into his eyes, reflecting the new sprouts in the herb patch, and my own reflection. You do not have to do this for me. It is not for you, but for us. He interrupted, gently wiping the mud from my face. The warmth of his palm made my eyes tear up. I guarded you at the pyre because of your mother's kindness. I stayed with you in the garret because I did not want you to be alone. Now, I want to guard you because I want to watch the herbs sprout every spring with you, and draw protective runes every full moon. The cheers of the villagers suddenly erupted. Martha laughed, holding little Tom. Cain turned his head away, subtly wiping his eyes. I looked into Samuel's eyes, suddenly recalling the words on the last page of my mother's manual. If one day, a man is willing to stand between you and the pyre of the church, that is no forbidden love, that is the guardian chosen by the rune. By sunset, the herb patch was full of new seedlings. The villagers lit a bonfire nearby, roasting bread and potatoes. The aroma drifted far. Little Tom, holding the simple calming rune I taught him, ran around the beast cub. The cub followed him docilely, its tail lightly sweeping the ground. Samuel sat beside me, holding my mother's manual, turning the pages, occasionally reciting an herbal remedy. I leaned on his shoulder, listening to the crackle of the bonfire and the laughter of the villagers, my heart utterly at peace. When the Rune Academy opens, I will first teach the children to draw protective runes, I murmured, watching the sunset paint the sky a warm orange. I will also teach them to recognize the herbs, and tell them that the power of nature is never dark arts, it is for guardianship. Samuel squeezed my hand, his finger tracing the rune marks on my palm. I will be with you. I will teach them to protect themselves with the sword, and to heal others with the herbs. Every spring hereafter, the herb patch will sprout new life. We will draw runes here, teach the herbs, guard each other, and guard this land where truth was reborn. The residual warmth of the bonfire mixed with the evening wind, blowing over the newly planted seedlings, carrying a faint, clean fragrance. I knew my mother's name was completely cleared. All those falsely accused witches would be vindicated. And Samuel and I, with my mother's legacy and the villagers' trust, would continue to tell the story of guardianship in this herb patch, forever.